Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of a Pride Perspective, conversations with the community here at Trinity-Pawling. As many of you know who have been on these webinars before, they have been going on since April and May, and we've had conversations about just about everything. The two gentlemen you see on the screen right now have been a part of those perspectives before, talking about all things college. And we've also had athletic conversations. We've had conversations on the Center for Learning Achievement, a roundtable with alumni. All of these conversations can be found on our website, right underneath the Pride Perspective webinar page, as well as on our YouTube channel. So please head to those at your leisure, just in case you want another hour of sitting in front of a computer. But for right now, we are going to be talking about the college process and how that is looking at Trinity-Pawling right now, and also in different aspects. And before I introduce our two panelists, I do want to remind you that we do have the Q&A button on your screen. And if throughout the night a question arises, please do not hesitate to send that question in. But we also want to thank you all for sending in questions before or as you were registering. So we will get to those questions when we can and after the introduction. So let's get this going. So Mr. Mead, why don't you just introduce yourself, and we'll start from there.
Okay, great. Thank you, JP. Thanks for putting this together. And thank you to Emma, who is the technology person who gets all these things organized. It's great to have so many families sign up. It was kind of fun this afternoon. The numbers just kept rising and rising. And that makes sense because the college process, it's rising and rising. This is the time of year when there's a lot of angst. And this is my 11th or 12th year doing this. And I got to tell you, I was really nervous going into this, but I think Scott and I have a good handle on what's going on, and the kids are doing well. And I'm a lot less nervous than I was at the beginning of the year. So introduction, I'm Slade Mead, and I'm not as nervous as I was at the beginning of the year. Things are looking very, very good. Over to you, Scott.
Thanks, Mr. Mead. For everyone I haven't met, I'm Scott Harff. In addition to working very closely with Slade here in the College Counseling Office, I also teach an economics course and then coach hockey and lacrosse.
Great. So we're gonna get right into this because there is plenty of different questions coming in from, as we talked about with the registration. But I just wanted to start with, you know, the nice part about me being down the hall from both of you. I think I'm 30 to 40 feet from Scott, and I'm 100 feet from Slade. Your offices have been on fire this fall. Not with our normal college representatives, but with our students. And, you know, if Scott maybe or Slade, either one, can you tell who's been running in and out of your office, and you know, what have those been meetings like?
Yeah, I can take that. The fall every year is filled with PGs, so our postgraduates, and then our returning seniors. So that's really from the time, you know, Slade and I meet with our postgraduates kind of the first day they get here. And that's really the last time we really treat them any different than our seniors. So the moment they step on campus, they're really engulfed into that senior class that's returning from the previous year. And the college process certainly looks very similar. And this year, just because the returners were remote for most of the spring, or all of the spring, I should say, the postgraduates and the seniors are really on a level playing field. So the fall for our seniors looks a lot. There's a lot of meetings, like you said, JP. We're working on college essays. We're working on common applications. We're working on University of California applications. So one of the things we really take pride in, no pun intended being the pride here, is reading line by line through every student's common app. So that's one of the advantages of having sometimes a smaller senior class. Even though there's only two of us, we are able to make sure that each student's getting a very personalized process And that goes to the college essays too. So not only the big main college essay that everyone hears about, but a lot of colleges, as they move to a test optional model, which we can get to later, JP, colleges are asking for more of these supplemental essays. That might not be the full 650 word essay, but you might be hit with, even for one application, you might have 2 or 3 200 to 300 word essays. So that's kind of what this fall's been. And Slade, if you have anything to add.
The only difference between Scott's office and my office, other than our proximity to JP's office, is I probably spend a greater percentage of my day on Zoom with the students from Asia. So those meetings have been a little bit tricky, primarily because the poor guys in Asia are signing in at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning sometimes to get in to see me, but we're getting the job done. It's run extremely smooth this fall, and I got to take my hats off to the seniors. For the most part, they've been extremely responsive about attending meetings, being on time, jumping on the college virtual visits. This class of 2021 is shaping up to be a really fun class to work with.
Great, and actually, we're kind of that delves into a perfect next question that came in when a parent was registering, and it is a PG parent. But when submitting applications to the various colleges, what grades will be submitted for the PG students? And maybe, I guess it could be also for seniors, 1 year senior or what have you. But can you talk a little bit about the grades and what's submitted?
Sure. Scott, can I take this one?
Yeah.
Okay, what will happen is all the parents, you just received what's called the Fall 1 grades. There's going to be a Fall 1, Fall 2, Fall 3, which are all partial grades to the fall term grade. And on November 21st, which I believe is a Monday, Mr. Harff and I will be in our offices sending out the fall term, not the F1 that you received, but the fall term grades to every college that all our guys apply to, whether or not they're PGs or seniors. The application, any application that's submitted for early action or early decision, even though those may have been submitted November 1st or November 15th, they will be waiting, the schools, the colleges will be waiting for that first transcript from us, which will go out on November 21st, regardless of whether you're a PG or a regular senior. If you're a postgraduate, the colleges will also receive your transcript from your previous school. And again, not again, I haven't said this yet, but Mr. Harff and I take care of that. We will send out all the transcripts. The parents are off the hook. Your old school's off the hook. We will do that for you. Okay.
And also, just FYI, the 21st is a Saturday, so are you going to be working through that weekend?
23rd. They go out the 23rd. The 21st then is the date that all the grades have to be in.
For school.
For school. And then Denise Palmer comes in on Sunday and we get all the transcripts ready and we send them out Monday morning.
Fantastic. And again, perfect kind of segue here to recommendations. How do they work? And are they already done? Parents, I'm sure, are wondering how these recommendations are their boys asking for recommendations? Do the students, how are they involved in this? So if you want to talk about the recommendation process and how Trinity-Pawling handles that.
So for I'll split it up into kind of 2 answers. One, for our returners, 95% of our returners requested recommendations during their initial meetings last year. And we can kind of talk about those initial meetings when we get to what we're doing with the juniors every year later. So those are in process right now. And to alleviate some stress for our seniors and for our parents, let me and Mr. Mead here be the bad guys and chase down the teachers. So teachers know, teachers are aware, and most teachers are writing those right now. Those they're asked to be submitted by, I think, next week, so that we have them ready to go out for any November application. But don't jump all over a teacher let us do that. I will say that the colleges are going to be much more interested in what you're sending on time rather than if a teacher recommendation happens to be 24, 48 hours late. So let us handle that. For the PGs, kind of second part to the question, the PGs are in a pretty unique situation. So if you did have a teacher, whether it's an English or history teacher or a science or math teacher that you had an incredible relationship with, and you feel like your college application is incomplete without including their testimony of how you are in their class, we actually can get a recommendation done from your previous school. You do need one from Trinity-Pawling, which we can help you get, and our teachers are happy to write. But like I said, if you do have someone from your previous school that you feel you absolutely need to include, we can help get that done. For any PGs that are listening now, if you haven't listed that, that would be something like come into our office tomorrow and get done, just because we do want to make sure that we're being fair to the teachers who are all busy at this time, and then we're not asking for them right at the last minute.
Okay. And then
can I piggyback on something that Scott said, and this is good for the younger parents, or the parents with younger kids, I should say. You want 2 teacher recommendations. And as Scott alluded to, but I just want to make sure we're clear on this, you want one of them to come from the humanities, a history or English teacher, and you want the others to come from math or science. Most colleges, and this is, every college does it a little different, but I'd say 75% of the colleges out there will only take 2 teacher recommendations. And the question comes up a lot, and Scott, I'm sure you've been asked this question, should I get a recommendation from my art teacher? Should I get a recommendation from my dorm parent? Colleges really want 2, and a lot of them will only take 1. And if it's a situation where they only take 1, what Mr. Harff and I do is we read both recommendations and we make a decision which one does a better job adequately introducing the college to that student, and we'll pick the stronger of the 2 recommendations. Rarely do we send out 3 or more, just because very few colleges want that.
So again, a little bit of a recommendation question, and I'm not sure that I even understand the question, but I'm going to say it exactly how it's typed in here. How do we get class standing information?
No, that's actually a very good question. That's
okay.
A very good question. Here's what's happening, and this is for the seniors. Junior parents, you can listen, but it won't make much sense. Senior parents, this will make a lot of sense. Part of the Common Application asks for your class ranking, and Trinity-Pawling does not do a class ranking for the very logical reason we have so many kids who join us at different stages of their high school. Few of our students actually start as 9th graders and get to senior year. A lot come in as 10th graders. A lot come in as repeat juniors. A lot come in as postgraduates. So a class rank doesn't really mean much when you have apples being compared to oranges, to pears, and kumquats. So we can elect not to do a class ranking. That's perfectly legitimate, and colleges understand it, and they understand most prep schools don't do class ranking. But the Common App will ask for one. And I think that's where the question was generated from a parent, like, how do we answer this question? You just say none. And it will not hurt your son, because the schools, the colleges understand our unique situation as a prep school.
Okay. And then there was that was
a really good question, by the way. That's an A+.
Add to that really quickly too.
Sure.
A big school like I'm going to pick on Penn State right now. A big school like Penn State, where a lot of their application process is built on a GPA, they're going to go recalculate that for everyone that applies anyway. Because comparing us to Pawling High School, whether you're a 4-year student or a postgraduate or what have you, it just doesn't make sense to compare them using 2 separate grading systems. So almost indefinitely, you're going to get a GPA at each school that you apply to that their office is going to take care of.
All right. So I'm gonna ask this question, the full question, one more time, just because I think there was a part that we missed here. But how do we get class standing info and recommendations when our son is done with the Common App? What are next steps? So I guess the second part of that was, do parents ever see recommendations?
No, in fact, the parent nor the student can see the recommendation. Part of the Common App, you sign a waiver saying you're not going to see the recommendation. The way it's written is if the student insists on seeing the recommendation, that's fine, but the school then won't use it. So they kind of got you in a catch-22. If you're dying to see a recommendation, a teacher is allowed to share it. I don't recommend they do. It's a bad habit to get into. But colleges won't read recommendations that the student has seen.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
I think part of the question also might be, how are the colleges receiving the recommendations? That's all through Naviance. So,
oh, right. We submit it all electronically.
So seniors need to be, especially if it's one of the cool things that's happened. I don't know if it happens, you might know, but the Common App now talks to Naviance. So if you're applying to a Common App school, the minute you click submit, Mr. Mead and I get a notification that says, if Mr. Mead submits, it tells me that he's submitted to again, I'm going to pick on Penn State. And then I know the next morning to send out that recommendation, his transcript, and then the council letter, which we can talk about later. If you're not applying with a Common App school, so some schools out there actually require you to submit an application that's their own personal application. You do need to go, students, this is for you, you do need to go into Naviance and actually manually say, I have submitted this application. That then triggers the process again, notification to me and Mr. Mead that we can now send your recommendation.
Okay.
Actually, Scott,
Mm-hmm.
Naviance, it actually now alerts us when it's a non-Common App school in the send function.
But the students need to say that they did that though.
Yeah. Okay, I thought it now does. Well, regardless, we cover it because we know. Let's just pick on the UC system, which is the California system, which is not Common App. Mr. Harff and I are fully aware who's applying there. We know the deadline, so we're constantly checking. In fact, it's sort of a nightly routine as I just go through every kid to make sure we haven't missed an application that was sent in. The one area where there can be a problem, and this there's not much Mr. Harff and I can do about it, is if a student applies to a college but doesn't tell us through Naviance. That's problematic because we're blind at that point. And believe me, especially once we hit November 1st, we will pound the seniors with make sure any school you apply to, you've got it on your Naviance. Otherwise, we're in the dark. But as long as we're told, everything gets sent in electronically.
All right, for those of us on this call, can someone please explain Naviance?
Sure, Naviance is a facilitating program that allows the student to put in a list of his schools to which he's applying. So that's part of Naviance. And then there's a backside of Naviance that allows the school to upload the student's transcript, to upload their teacher recommendations, to upload something called the secondary school report, which is a big, broad letter, to upload something called the school profile. So as Scott so eloquently said, when a student sends an application into a college, Naviance gets an alert telling us, hey, Jimmy just applied to the University of Vermont. So then what we do is we push a button and transcript, teacher recs, school profile, everything goes up to the University of Vermont, joins with the Common App, and Vermont now has everything. But the Naviance is also a window so Mr. Harff and I can see exactly what your son is thinking. So if he's sitting in his dorm room and all of a sudden he decides, you know what, I do want to apply to Hobart. Okay, good for him. He has to put Hobart on the Naviance. And as soon as it's on the Naviance, Mr. Harff and I we're in the game with him. We're dance partners. We understand what he's doing. it's the kid who just goes home Christmas vacation, just willy-nilly sends out an application through Common App. We can't send stuff if we don't know it's been done.
Got it. Okay. And I know that there is, and I don't want to get there yet, but I know there's a Naviance aspect to our juniors because it starts the process. But before we get to that point, I want to finish talking about our seniors. And, you know, Mr. Harff, there is, I know you guys keep talking about this SSR, and I know there's a big difference between the SSR and what other public schools produce. Can you talk about what that is and why it's so important and what Trinity-Pawling does differently?
Yeah, so every college applicant's going to have the secondary school report, which is a form that says the student's average, excellent, below average at a bunch of different criteria. So we fill that out. And that's everything from what you're doing in the classroom to how you are in the community to how you are in your extracurricular activities. What we do that gives our students a big leg up is we also accompany this with a letter. So that's not mandatory. So if you're at a public school with, you know, counselors who are working with hundreds of kids at a time, they don't have time to sit down and write this letter. So, and it's actually one of my favorite parts of the job. I just wrote 3 of them today before this webinar. We get to actually go into every student's application folder that when they came through your office, JP, and go through their entire Trinity-Pawling career. And we get to write this page to page and a half letter that is everything that encompasses the student outside of the classroom. So we're talking about what he's like on the dorm, what sports is he doing, what clubs is he part of, what leadership does he have at Trinity-Pawling? Did he go, you know, we talk about the Global Collaborative Challenge, we talk about winter projects, senior independent projects, any trips they've been on. It's like this holistic letter that lets the colleges are reading and can get an actual picture of who this kid is outside of, you know, a GPA and what he's like in English class and what he's like in science class. And I think one of the hallmarks of Trinity-Pawling is that we bring in a lot of different perspectives. So Mr. Mead mentioned that, you know, it's not often we're going to submit an art teacher recommendation. But if you have an incredible relationship with your art teacher, let us know that so that we can go talk to your art teacher. And when we're writing this letter, there's going to be direct quotes from Mr. Reed about how great this student was in, you know, teaching him for 4 years. We're getting quotes from coaches. We're getting quotes from advisors. I already used the term, but it is a holistic approach to who this person is that's applying to your school. And I don't want to toot our own horn too much, but it does end up, along with the students' essays, a lot of times these letters do end up being the difference between kids getting in and kids not getting in school. You're on mute. Do you have anything to add?
I was trying to not have the train whistle in the background. So anything to add to that?
No, I think Scott did a good job. The proof, well, we do get feedback from colleges that they really enjoy reading our SSRs. And it's like, how do you know these kids so well? And when I hear a college ask me that question, you know, it makes me feel really good. And a lot of times it's not necessarily my voice in the letter, it's the voices of all the comments that we've taken out of the file, or that people, as Scott said, you know, teachers or coaches have told us anecdotally about, you know, a student that we put into the letter.
Great. And, you know, before we kind of move on to more, not that we're leaving the seniors, because we can have questions revolving them throughout the evening, but
they're seniors.
They're almost done anyway. So as I said, the hustle and bustle of seniors down the hallways of Cluett is great to see. But what's different this fall is not seeing all of the college representatives. And that normally is a massive number per day, per week. So how have you done that? How has it gone? Obviously our remote kids can, which is nice, but talk about that.
I'm laughing, JP, because this is a classic example of Slade, the old guy, versus Scott, the young guy. And I was really worried about not getting good connection through visits. And Scott, the young guy, was like, don't worry about it. This will be fine. Zoom will work. And part of me was like, oh my God, I want the person to be in Cluet lobby. I stand corrected. Scott was correct. It's working just fine. Scott, why don't you talk about how we've set up all these virtual meetings?
Yeah, so I think before I jump into that, I think it's important to talk about, I hinted at it earlier, all these schools, almost every school in the country now is test optional. And a lot of colleges are panicking because on top of being test optional for the first time, they're either not accepting any tours on campus, and they certainly weren't accepting tours back in, the classic college tour season of March, April, May, and June. And now even if they do have tours on campus, it's like one family at a time. You got to schedule it, at this point, you got to schedule it a month and a half in advance. So the colleges are panicking because that's how they attract students to come to apply, is by getting them on campus. So almost probably before the school year even ended, we're getting in, Mr. Mead and I are getting inundated about, are you going to be having people on campus? Are you going to be doing Zoom visits? So what we've done is scheduled Zoom visits. We don't have anyone coming physically to campus, but today we had, I'm looking at our schedule, we had 4 academic periods, we had 4 college visits. They're all on Zoom. Every senior has the Zoom information so they can pop in at any time. If a school's on your Naviance and they're visiting, the senior's getting an email at the beginning of the week. We also mentioned the schedule during our Monday morning meeting. And then I always send out a reminder email around 8 o'clock so that students who have an early 9 a.m. meeting know that the school that's on their list is there. The kids, the seniors have been awesome. And the representatives, you can see it on screen, like their eyes light up getting to see people. Because I don't know this for a fact, but what I would imagine is that there's a lot of these going on at public schools. And just like when they come in person to public schools, there's a lot of times where they sit on Zoom and don't get to meet anyone. So, I was on one a few weeks ago. I won't say what school, but I think we had 7 kids in the waiting room before I even showed up. So the kids are doing an incredible job. I've talked to the seniors about this, but I think it's good for the parents to hear it too. There's this thing called demonstrated interest that a lot of schools are going to start using more and more and more. And demonstrated interest is just this idea that the Common App's made it so, and there's so many Common App schools now that are free, it's so easy to just click apply to a school. Demonstrated interest is not only have you applied, but I have this paper trail of you being on campus, or you being at a college meeting, or you filling out an inquiry form. So the more demonstrated interest you can show, the more serious of an applicant you seem, and that gives you a big leg up against someone who could be just as serious but just hasn't done anything. So right now, that's about as big of a demonstrated interest as you can show, is coming onto a Zoom call and having a good conversation with the representatives. Now, one question I get quite frequently, Mr. Harff, do I need to have anything prepared to it? What are they going to ask me? The colleges are there to impress you. So it's great to have questions prepared. I'm never going to say don't have questions prepared, but you, especially if you haven't been to one yet and it's your first one coming up tomorrow, go to it. Be polite. I trust that all our guys are polite. They always look good. They're in dress code. But let the college impress you. You're there to find out about the college. So I think it's been a success. I think we've actually been able to see more. We've had new schools pop up because they don't have to drive to northern New York or upstate New York.
Yep.
Our numbers, JP, for college visits, this is the busiest year we've ever had. And if you had told me that in late August, I would have said, these visits won't work. It has been phenomenal. It's been
And
really,
the other thing I'd add on that, on the visits, is there's a few um, virtual college fairs that are coming up at the tail end of October, beginning of November. So if you're interested in doing those, feel free to reach out to me and I can give you the links for those. But those will be the same idea. They're all on Zoom. If there's a school that hasn't been to campus and you are really interested in it or want to find out more about it, I would highly suggest that.
Well, and as a parent, I'm probably thinking, how can I find out what schools have visited or will be visiting? Is that something that I just have to step back and let my son do all of that, or is there a way for me to see that?
I'm going to give you a shameless plug for our college counseling newsletter, but that goes out to the seniors. And now this past Monday, we did, for the first time, went out to the juniors. So that has the week schedule on it. So that comes out every Monday in an email from our office.
Great.
And JP, the parents have access to Naviance as well. It's not just the students. And every parent has a Naviance account, and they can go on there and see the schools that are coming. Our whole schedule is shown there.
Perfect. So
Yeah.
for all of you parents out there that don't know your username and password, send an email to these two guys.
To Mr. Harff, send an email to Mr.
That's
Harff.
right. Yes. All right. Maybe one last question, kind of geared towards recommendations. But if you're requesting a personal recommendation for a specific school from an alum, is that done via the Common App, by the parent, etc.?
Okay. If you have the famous, we have a friend of a friend who's on the board at X. Here's my advice. I have three things I want to share with this. First off, make sure that the friend really knows the kid and is not a parental friend, because it's very awkward to have a letter come to an admissions office that will say, I really don't know Johnny well, but boy, his parents are terrific. That doesn't help. Suggest that the friend might talk with Johnny before the letter goes out. So that's sort of number one. Number two, if you've got a very heavy hitter friend who is willing to help, be very careful about what you ask for, because if you ask your friend to go out on a limb and advocate for the student and the student gets in but decides to go to another college, that's very awkward for the alum. They've burned a favor. So I only recommend it when it really is your first or second choice. So that's the second piece. The third piece is it often doesn't do any good. And Lord knows the more you send, the worse they do. There's some nightmare stories of 20 letters coming in about Johnny, and half of them spell Johnny with one N and half with two N's. And it's just, I don't like it. I can't stop it. And then the third piece is, if you have a friend who really wants to write this letter, what you do is on the top of your Common App, on the top of Johnny's Common App, there's something called a CAID, your Common App ID number. Please give that number to the friend to put on top of the letter, because then it will link it when it arrives at the office. It will get into Johnny's file. Naviance doesn't let us send in those letters. So this is something that has to be done outside of the Naviance and the Common App. That the recommendation has to just be a good old-fashioned letter sent to the admissions office. So that's why you want that Common App ID number.
Great. All right, so we're going to switch gears a little bit. Scott, you've talked about the SATs and ACTs and the fact that they're optional. So let's dive into that for our seniors, and also the obvious opportunity that gives to our juniors down the line. And just one of the questions that came in from a parent having trouble navigating the SAT website, and it states that it will send results to his old high school. So if you could talk to the optional part and then maybe chime in with just how families should be dealing with the SAT website, and is it something that we will be doing or they should still be doing? So maybe go optional first.
Yeah, the optional piece. So as the pandemic that we're in kept getting worse and worse and worse, when we did this first webinar, I think you could count the number of schools that had gone test optional. It was like 5. Now it's like, I don't even know if there's maybe 5 that still are requiring the SAT or the ACT. So what a lot of schools have decided to do is one of 2 things. They're either optional just for this class, or they're going optional for the next 4 years, and then making a decision after. We can do all the predictions we want. Yes, it'd be great if they go test optional, but let's just focus on what's going on right now. The problem it's created is that all of these schools are going into, especially if you look at a big school, a big state school, or a big research university that might not be as holistic as before. Now they're forced to be holistic because they've lost this big point of information. So what do you do? That's where the demonstrated interest comes in. We've talked about in a webinar before, that's where diving into our global collaborative challenges for the juniors, diving into your senior independent project, or as a PG, diving into the global collaborative challenge. That's another point of information that you're going to have that someone who doesn't go to Trinity-Pawling wouldn't have. Just back to what test optional means in general, it is literally that your SAT and ACT scores are optional. A lot of times, I think parents and students read into that a little bit too much, that, what they really mean is that they want this score instead of not submitting a score. No, like, one of the things I actually suggest is, if you're not really sure, reach out to our representative, say, what score range do you accept? If it's a rep we know really closely, I'll even say, just tell them what your score is. They're not going to hold that against you. One of the things I learned very quickly when I started this job 5 years ago, maybe, was that we are all admissions counselors. So even though they seem really scary, and yeah, they are gatekeepers to college, all of these people want to help you. So ask them, should I submit a score that's in this range? They're going to come out and say either yes or no, or generally are, middle 50%. So that middle range of scores are this. It's another point of demonstrated interest again, that you've reached out to them. So that's helpful. And they're not going to hold it against you if you don't apply, if you don't send your scores in. So it really quite literally is test optional. For the juniors, I would still take tests when you can, especially because we're a test center for all Trinity-Pawling students. So if you want to take an ACT, we have a code. You can get it. It's in the college newsletter that I just shamelessly plugged. I'm going to shamelessly plug again. Read that. The code's in there. And then for the SAT, sign up for any test center in the world, and then send Mr. Mead an email with your admission ticket, and he'll transfer you into our Trinity-Pawling test. That's just for this year.
But not for December, not for December.
Oh yeah, excuse me. The 2
Not
December tests you have to take at home because
at home.
you're not in school. But any of the other tests that we have, but any of the other tests that we're in session for, you can take on campus. On the flip side of things, if you knock an SAT or an ACT out of the park, this is actually a really awesome year to be applying to college, because you're going to stand out more than ever. So I think while it is scary, and the colleges are scared, and the big money makers of the SAT and the ACT, they're scared. I think our students are in a very good position, because, like I said, they do have another point of information, and with the SIP, with the GCC, our council letter is going to be the SSR that I talked about earlier is going to be a big part of that. So take the test when you can on campus. There's an incredible advantage of going to school and being able to take the test, because a lot of people aren't able to right now. And if you knock it out of the park, submit it. If you don't submit it. Slade, do you want to tackle the profile, the SAT profile question?
No, well, for the person who asked the question or who had a problem changing the
Yeah.
high school code, email your son the username and password for the College Board, the SAT account, have them come see me, and I should be able to change it in about 15 seconds.
Perfect. Slade, did you want to add anything to the test optional?
No, I think Scott really hit the nail on the head.
Okay, perfect. So 2 questions that we got ACT questions coming in. So my son's ACT score on Naviance is out of date. How do I get his newer scores uploaded?
Okay, that's a good question. First off, the fact that the score is out of date on Naviance has no bearing with the colleges. They don't see that. That's communication between the student and Mr. Harff and me. So yeah, we'll get it fixed. What happens is the ACT and the SAT send me a huge data load or dump or whatever they call it. They call it a data load every 2 months. And I download it and it should update the Naviance. If it's bugging you, send me an email with the copy of the ACT score and I can put it in manually. But those doesn't really have any bearing on the college process.
Okay.
It's good information. One of the great tools of Naviance is it's really where a lot of students, and we can talk about this when we get to the juniors, JP, but it's a great place to start your college research. And we have historical data several years back of all of the Trinity-Pawling students who've applied to the school, and some of it's self-reported whether they got in or not. But that's where the Naviance scores and the GPAs, which sometimes are out of date, that's where those are important, because you can see if I'm an 85 and have a 23 and I'm applying to Penn State, where would I be historically as a Trinity-Pawling student?
Can I point out something there, Scott? And this is important, I think, for the seniors and the senior parents. When you look at the graphs that show what Trinity-Pawling students historically have done at schools, there is one fallacy, and this is a Naviance problem, but you should be aware it exists. If a student, for instance, applies early decision and applies to 6 early action schools and gets in early decision and gets into 5 of the 6 early action schools, he withdraws his applications from those 5 accepted schools, and Naviance doesn't show it as accepted at that point. So you've got some data in there, because of the way Naviance works, that an abandoned application will come up as a no when it could be a yes. So maybe I'm getting too detailed. I'm a little skeptical about those graphs, just because there are some kids who are showing they didn't get in, but it's also because they withdrew their application.
All right. So another ACT question. So if, because of what you guys said about December, if someone's son is registered for the TP test on December 12th?
TP doesn't have a test on December 12th. All the testing in December, the SAT on the December 5th and the ACT on the 12th, were closed. Those
No, I understand that. So if they pre-registered for it, where should they go take it?
To the closest center to their house.
Okay. So
When
is
they
that,
pre-registered, you mean pre-registered at TP?
yes, the question, my son is registered for this one on 12/12. Where will he be taking the test?
Okay, kudos to that parent, because that means they submitted it way back, or they signed up for that test center probably back in like June.
On the ball.
They're super on the ball, because we went to the ACT and closed our December site sometime in the summer. So I misunderstood. And seriously, kudos to that parent for being that prepared. Send me, scan the ticket and send it to me, and I will contact my point person at the ACT and get you moved over. That would be much easier than you trying to do it through the phone system at the ACT. You'll die of old age trying to get through.
All right. I'm sure this parent is listening, and they will listen to your
Well,
request.
you have the parent too, JP. Tomorrow,
Yep.
Just give me the name, and I'll reach out to you, because I'm so impressed you signed up back in the early summer.
All right. So let's move. I'm sure there will be more questions in the next 15 minutes about that, but juniors, how does it start? That's two of the questions here. What is the starting point, and how do you all figure out best fits in terms of what their son's interests are? So when and how does it all begin?
I can start that one off. So this year, so correct me if I'm wrong, December 16th, right?
That's
Wednesday,
correct.
December 16th. We normally do when we're in person, and we can have visitors to campus. We do a big junior parents day, where we invite the whole junior class gets the day off from class. You spend the morning with us. We invite a representative from a big state university, a medium-sized private university, and a small liberal arts college. So we have a panel discussion. We always have one of those representatives give a keynote speech. We'll often have a financial aid talk. So that's really the official kickoff of when we say goodbye to our seniors that we've worked all of their junior spring and then their senior fall with. Most of them at that point, most if not all, will have applied and have actually begun hearing back from the early decision and early action schools. So that's the point in time where we leave them. They're updating Naviance if they're adding schools, like we talked, if they're applying to more schools, like we talked about. So we're still sending in recommendations and we're sending in transcripts and such. But then when we get back from Christmas break, Mr. Mead and I start meeting in earnest, and the hallway by Mr. Burlington's office gets busy again. And these meetings are, rather than working the Common App and working in college essays, the first one is always we ask the kids to do what's called a brag sheet, which is it's how we start the counselor letter, but it also, the front of it's also, you want to go to school in the Northeast, you want to go out to California, you want to go to the Southwest, you want to go to the Southeast. You want a big, massive, Ohio State school? Do you want something medium sized? Do you want something small? Do you have any academic interests that you think might be majors? So we start very broad and start to shrink it down. We talk about kind of how the athletic piece, I know there's a couple questions about recruiting. We can talk about that later. But even with the athletes, a lot of our college process is finding, Mr. Mead and I, especially Mr. Mead, and as I've started to work with more and more colleges and more students, you get a sense for what type of students are going to fit at different colleges. And I firmly believe that at this, in 2020, you're going to get a great education at any of these schools out there. So more than the name, I think so much of it is about, do they have the major you want? Do they have the extracurricular activities you want? Are they in the location you want? Because, and we can go back to the athletic recruiting thing, if you have a bad experience in class or you break your leg and you can't play the sport, are you happy with the people there? A lot of this, in this day and age, one of the big advantages is you can start your college research off earlier than ever, because with the pandemic, we talked about, people aren't able to go visit campuses as much. There's tons and tons of virtual tours out, so you can start to get a sense for what a campus feels like. There's many virtual info sessions, so you can you can hear from professors, you can hear from actual students there, and get a sense for what the community's like, what your academic experience is going to be like, and see if you could see yourself there. I'll let Slade take over if he has any other thoughts.
Well, one thing I want to add to that, JP, is the first meeting, I really would like it to be between the student and myself. No disrespect to the parents, but oftentimes students will say things to us that they don't necessarily say or share with the parent. That, alert. I think it's very important to let the student express to me what he thinks is the type of school he wants. we will put together what we call a roadmap, which is an Excel sheet, and we send it right from the meeting to the student once we're over and to the parents. Now, when you get that sheet as a parent and you're like, oh my gosh, what is Johnny thinking? Then that's the second meeting and we can talk and you can put in the parental input. But I would caution you, a lot of times you're going to see that Excel sheet and you're going to be like, I didn't realize that is what Johnny's thinking, and maybe I should talk to Johnny. And then interestingly enough, what happens about 99% of the time is the list will work with the parent and the student together and come up with the college list. But I beg you parents to hold off until we have a chance to have that initial meeting one-on-one with your son. Back to you, JP.
So before we head to a little bit of athletics, because I know, as you said, Scott, that's a question here. I want to go back. A great question came in. Trinity-Pawling, known for the effort system, and do colleges see effort grades? And right? So, do they see the grades? Do they see just the letter grades? And then where does the effort system lie in the process?
Okay, I'm going to whisper this to the audience because this is a secret. The colleges do not see the effort grades because what they see is a transcript that has the number grades. They don't see the effort grades. And this is why I love this secondary school report. If your son just excels under the effort system, is in group 1, group 2 all the time, always doing everything right, you better believe the SSR is going to talk about the effort system and how we have it. And, Johnny is just, Johnny on the spot. I do not want the effort system to be a torpedo for any of our applicants. So if your son has been group 3, group 4, I'm not bringing that up in the SSR. That's more internally to try to get Johnny to, conform to a more rigid system and try to get up into group 2 and 1. So shamelessly, and if a college rep is watching this, the cover's blown. I use it when it's to the kid's advantage, and I completely ignore it when it's to the kid's disadvantage.
Great. I think that was something, if we had an SSR back in 1994, the effort system would have been a big part of that for me. I'm sure that the recommendations, just for that person who asked that question, the recommendations from your English, your math, the effort system is going to be a big part of that. And that's why it's such an important part of the Trinity-Pawling education. Back to some testing questions. Does Trinity-Pawling start working on SAT, ACT testing freshman year? Maybe i.e. how to take the test for better results. So go for it.
No, we don't freshman year. Some freshmen decide to start getting involved with Khan Academy, which is for free, and it's offered by the college board. And I highly recommend it if you feel that your son is ready to start preparing for the SAT. Quite frankly, though, I would rather trade in good grades on a transcript from 9th grade than worrying about SATs. The sophomores, it does start to pick up a little bit with what's called the PSAT. Our sophomores this year will be taking the PSAT January 26th. That's later than normal, and that's because of the pandemic. The juniors are taking the PST next week. And usually we do the juniors and sophomores together, but because of social distancing, that's why we've broken it between the October test date and the January test date. And the PSAT is a great practice test. It's 2 hours and 45 minutes. So it's a little shorter than the SAT, but it's the same format, same types of questions. One of the things I want to send out a word of caution about having a 9th grader worrying about SATs and ACTs is the math. Oftentimes there'll be math questions on the test that they haven't gotten to in their math class yet. And it can be very, very disheartening to get hit with math that you've never seen before. So, there are those 9th graders who are practicing now for the SATs and ACTs, but for the most part, I'm much more of a believer, get some great grades, build the foundation for a good GPA, because the transcript is actually going to be much more important than your SATs or ACT scores will be senior year.
Great. So we have another question about the PSAT. If a current junior took the PSAT his sophomore year, should he be taking it again?
Yes.
Okay, so any sophomore, any junior enrolled at Trinity-Pawling will be taking the PSAT.
No, because we have some repeat juniors. And if your son is a repeat junior, I sent an email out to the junior parents about this. If your son's a repeat junior and you want to opt him out of taking the PSAT for a second time as an 11th grader, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
On the other hand, it certainly doesn't hurt. It's a practice test. He's not going to have classes on Wednesday anyway, because all the juniors are in the PSAT. But you don't need to take it a second time if you're a repeat 11th grader.
But if you're not a repeat 11th grader and you took it sophomore year, you are taking it.
Yes, please.
Okay, there we go. All right, so let's, I'm sure there, in our next, well, I spoke too soon. We're gonna do another one. Will a student take the PSAT as a junior if they've already taken an SAT?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's usually a repeat junior. If you've already taken an SAT,
Or maybe or a subject test?
well, no, subject test is a little different. I would still take it, because your junior is probably a pretty good student if they're already taking SATs. And the only way you can become a National Merit Scholar or a semifinalist is through the PSATs. That's how that award is determined. So if you've got a good student, go for the National Merit Scholarship. It makes college a little bit cheaper, and it makes the admissions process a whole lot easier if you can put that on your application that you're a finalist or a semifinalist for the National Merit Scholar.
Okay,
And that's all through the PSAT.
The biggest thing that I took away from this 57 minutes was that right there. Take the PSAT.
Yeah, it's a practice. And if you do really, really well, it's a practice that comes with money.
Exactly. There you go. All right. So we're definitely going to go over the 8 o'clock hour, because I think the next couple of, I'm sure there'll be more questions, but I do want to talk about athletics in this world that we're in. One of the questions came in was about filming and how that is being done at Trinity-Pawling. And then also just in general, which I think dovetails into this, recruiting and how that's working with colleges. And I think Slade will, Scott will jump to you for this one. Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of the filming, we have a hockey practice, or not, skills practice tomorrow, and we'll be filming that with PlaySite, which we have. Squash courts have PlaySite. We have PlaySite on the rink. Basketball court has PlaySite. The football field has PlaySite. So lacrosse is filming when they're doing their out-of-season practice right now. Soccer's filming. Football's definitely filming. We're filming with hockey. I believe basketball is too. Squash, if you're an exceptional squash player and you want to film, every single court actually has its own camera, so you can set that up with Coach Fritz. But we have a PlaySite's been incredible for us in terms of being able to have college and pro style film going on at our practices. And I know I won't speak for the other sports, but I know with hockey we're sending practice film out to college coaches kind of all the time. So if you're playing a small game, or if there's as hopefully we get some more, are allowed to have more contact down the line, if we're doing a scrimmage, we can certainly send that out to any college coaches. Switching gears to the recruiting side of things, I'll go over more generally what we're doing in the college office, then I can kind of touch a little bit on what 2020 looks like. Most of our athletes, with the exception of some of the postgraduates, just because Mr. Mead now lives in the dorm with them and is their advisor, most of our guys who are looking to play Division III, Division II, Division I athletics are working with me. And the stance I like to take with it is to do exactly what I was talking about with uh, the general junior process. Um, it's I feel very strongly that the college process cannot be dictated purely by athletics. I think that it should be something that certainly is, in the admissions world, we call it a hook. So it's something that helps you stand apart. And if you're a good enough athlete that you can maybe level up and head into a better college than maybe your grades would without that sport, then by all means, we're going to support you through that process. But I work very closely with all of our varsity coaches who all have vast networks within all three levels of college, and a lot of them have, if you're looking to play a high level of club sports, which I know lacrosse and hockey often comes up, we have those networks too. But it's really making kind of a two-pronged list. It's like, let's talk to your coach about what a realistic hockey or soccer or basketball fit is, and then let's also not leave off the schools that are just a good fit academically and you'd be a great freshman in. And a lot of times there's a decent amount of crossover with those, but I think we're doing a disservice to the college process and a disservice to the student if we're not having that conversation and we're letting sport dictate the entire thing. The kind of third part, what 2020 looks like, it really depends on what level you are. So there's an NCAA dead period through January 1st right now, which means that any Division I recruiting just can't happen. There can be phone calls for juniors and seniors and postgraduates. You can go visit schools if they're allowing visits. You could visit on campus, but it can't be an official visit. And for juniors, for seniors it can, for juniors it cannot. And the colleges can't. Probably the most impactful thing that's impacting a lot of kids outside of Trinity-Pawling and at Trinity-Pawling is that colleges cannot go, Division I colleges cannot be out at football games or at lacrosse games or at baseball games or at hockey games. And any Division I sport, you cannot be actively recruiting out in the proverbial field. So what can you do? You can reach out to coaches. You can have your coaches here at Trinity-Pawling reach out to them. You can send film in. So I think for our guys, our juniors and seniors, depending on the sport, yes, it's something that's certainly creating some adversity, but every single person playing your sport right now is dealing with it. Division III is a whole other animal. Division III, like, it's kind of funny. There's no rule. So Division III recruiting is going on. That's just kind of how Division III works. Division II is also, they fall under the dead period as well. And that dead period is every single sport out there right now. You're muted.
Yeah. So the going back to the film, would you like say I was a basketball player, I could go to Coach Caston or Coach Kellogg and say, hey, I want to shoot 100 jumpers. Can you turn on PlaySite? And they say yes, and there's some film, and I think
and PlaySite's really, this is up to each individual coach. For hockey, we don't do it a lot for practice, but we do it every game, and we could if we wanted to for practice. It's just a decision we've made as a staff. If there's a coach that wants to watch you, and we do get to the point where we can have scrimmages, let Coach Caston, or if it's a football player, Coach Loff, or if it's a lacrosse player, Coach Kurtz, let them know, and we can just open up PlaySite so the coach just has the link and can watch live, and then we can also send out the recording.
Yeah, great. I did have a question come in here. Even if you are verbally committed, we should have a backup plan, correct?
Oh, yeah. And it doesn't matter if it's Division I, yes, absolutely, until you sign a letter of intent. So if you're a scholarship athlete and you sign a letter of intent, you're good. That's generally for lacrosse. That's going to happen here for our PGs. That would happen here in seniors. That would happen here in right before we leave for Christmas break. And then football, I'm not 100% sure if the football signing period changed with the dead period, but generally that's in December. And then other sports are going to soccer, hockey, that all lines up with that November period. So if you sign a national letter of intent, you're good. If you're verbally committed, a verbal commitment, to be careful how I word this, but a verbal commitment doesn't really mean a whole heck of a lot because both parties could walk away with it at any point in time. Now, it's bad form on both parties if they do walk away, if either one walks away. But a verbal commitment is really just, we really like you as of right now, based on what we have leaving and what we have coming in. You're a guy we would offer, a letter of intent to. That's at the Division I level. The Division III level, a verbal commitment means next to nothing until you're actually into the school. So that's pushed even further down the line. So if I'm verbally committed to Tufts, first of all, use your early decision slot because that shows, again, back to demonstrated interest. Early decision, we haven't talked about it directly. Early decision is what a lot of schools will use you apply in November, you hear back around Christmas time, and early decision means if I'm applying to Tufts, I'm telling Tufts the minute I submit my early decision application, you're my favorite school. If I get in, I'm coming to you. And so that's kind of your commitment is, it doesn't mean a whole lot until the admissions committee lets you in. Right. Now, once they let you in, then yeah, you're good.
And that's being an admissions officer. I mean, that's a big part of it, right? You Division III level, verbal commit means nothing until you have an acceptance letter in your hand.
But a lot of times, JP, you'll get that verbal commit from a Division III coach after they've done a pre-read and he's already talked to admissions, and he's getting a positive vibe.
Sure.
But the coach does not sit on the admissions committee.
Right. A big part of the process, but they are not at the table.
Back to using that hook of athletics, that's what that is yeah. If you have a verbal commitment, like go, and it's a school that you probably couldn't get into without that sport, like go all in on it. I'm a walking, talking example of it. Like I didn't deserve to go to Brown or Colby at all. And hockey got me there. But it doesn't mean anything until, in terms of getting into the school, until you get that application or the letter of acceptance from the school.
And I would also, just to make sure, that's the same thing for music. That's the same thing for theater. If you have a special interest, if you have that talent, use that to your advantage.
And I would also say, I know we have some prospective families on here. That's one of my favorite things about working with our students is we're one of the only boarding schools that you can play 3 varsity sports and then also go star in them. And that, I'll tell you what, that looks really good. What a hook. You're a starting baseball pitcher and you play on a hockey team and you play soccer and you've been in every play since you got here. Like that's a hook.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the AAA that I talk about, the arts, the athletics, and the academics. You've got the whole package. So it's 8:09. I have no questions in the Q&A box. So unless these two fine gentlemen have anything else to say, say it now.
I'm good.
All right. So for those of you on this call, if you missed anything, if something didn't make sense, if technology was an issue for you at home, this is recorded. It will be available probably by tomorrow afternoon. The tech savvy Emma will have this on our YouTube channel very soon. But also don't hesitate, and I know I speak for them, don't hesitate in reaching out to these two guys if you have questions about anything that was talked about or something else that comes on your mind. So signing off here from our Pride perspectives, as I said, all of the ones that we've done, I think we're getting close to 20 of these Wednesday night webinars. So please check in on the website, on our YouTube channel, and see what the school is doing, especially if you're a prospective family, but also even if you're a current family and you've missed something and you want to see something that we've covered, please don't hesitate to do that.
Hey, JP.
Oh, see, now they
No,
come
no, well, you just raised an interesting point. If you're a prospective family and you have a college question, why don't you send an email to JP, because you've got his email, then he'll send it to either Mr. Harff or myself, depending on whose sort of specialty that is.
Perfect.
But we'd welcome those from prospective parents.
Great.
And for all our juniors and junior parents, December 16th, Wednesday, 7 p.m., we've got our Junior Parents Day, but we're going to flip it and do it as a Pride perspective. So you get to see us.
Perfect. And speaking of that, next week, for those current parents, we're kicking off Parents Weekend, Virtual Parents Weekend Reimagined Wednesday night with Headmaster Taylor and some of our other faculty. So please be on the lookout. Well, it's already on the Pride Perspective website. So for those current families, please sign up for that for next week. And you'll obviously be receiving information on that probably very soon. So for all of us at Trinity-Pawling, it was a pleasure being here with you tonight. Please be safe and healthy, and we will see you soon.